Mother Funny Time with Andie and Angie.
2 cousins, 8 kids, 1 grandkid, 2 states.
And a whole lot of fun. Woo! Welcome back, Mother Funny Tribe. It's Angie and Andy, 2 cousins in Texas, ready to talk to you about chaos and navigating through the chaos, how to do it, some of our own chaotic stories.
Like the tornado that was swirling around
Tornado.
us last night. Like the basketball hoop that fell over and dented my car on Saturday night.
No,
The
did
chaos.
it really?
And weird weather. You guys, the weather in Texas has been a little extreme, a little crazy.
And every time we're out, it's extreme.
I kind of think so because you guys were here for like Snowmageddon a couple
Yeah,
years
we
ago.
were. Whenever the
Sometime
power grid goes down, we like to be here. Is
so
what it seems like.
or if it's super, super hot, Andy's here. Clearly, we're having this like weird tornado slash heavy winds, rain, thunderstorms, power outages. Andy likes to be here for that. She lives
I
in
like
California,
yeah.
but she definitely wants to be part of that whole situation. Yes, today we're talking about chaos and navigating chaos. As we learned in the last podcast, we cannot control chaos.
No.
We try to navigate it, manage it, handle it, work through it, and also sometimes laugh or cry, depending on where you're at in that whole situation.
I have a good story about crying in chaos.
Andy has a whole bunch of
I
stories,
have
and
so
this
many
is
stories.
hilarious, and that is what has
I
inspired.
think I bring chaos. Like chaos, that chaotic time of my life is mostly moved on, but I think it just follows me. I don't know like theologically how that makes sense. But
So moms of little ones and elementary school age kids and high schoolers, just know
it keeps going.
chaos will be with you forever.
Like, there is some chaos we choose. Like, I know right now we're dealing with a lot. Like, we have, I won't get into the sadness, but we have a memorial service coming up, and we, especially my husband has a lot to do for that, and then we have trips planned. My son is having a reception. We're going on a missions trip to Romania. Chris is going on a writer's retreat after that in Europe, and we just have this chaos, all this stuff planned, and then Chris is planning another thing, and he's like, "Why is everything so busy and hard?" And I was like, "Well, some of it you brought on yourself." Like, some of it, yes, fair enough, like, some things happen out of your control, but some of it too, we didn't have to plan all these trips back to back. Like, I mean, the mission trip, like, we didn't have to go, but we wanna go, and we know we feel, like, really led to go. But one time we were on a mission trip, my kids were little. We went to New York right after 9/11, so 2002, September 2002, we went to New York to help with there was a festival being put on there, and it was me. Caleb was a baby. Caleb was born in 2001, so he was a year old. I had Shiloh wasn't born. I had Daisy, who was, like, 4 or 5. She was been just about 5, and we're in New York, and we just have the old cell phones, right? And Chris had taken
You couldn't even, like, text.
we had, like, flip
Right?
phone.
Yeah, it was for those moms
With
who
the
were
cameras you pulled out.
younger, like, when you're thinking cell phone, it's not what it was. Like
And the service wasn't great, and you didn't have service everywhere. There was no Wi-Fi.
right.
There was no, like so we had this team of high schoolers with
It was the
us.
dark
It
ages.
was the dark ages, and
You had
people
a
were
phone,
dressed as
but not
clowns,
really.
and Chris had Caleb in a stroller. It was Chris and Caleb and a bunch of high schoolers, and I had Daisy and a bunch of high schoolers. I think I had Daisy. Anyway, we're in New York after 9/11. We have these old phones. I'm have this team, and first of all, the West Nile virus was new, and one of the kids was sick with me, and there was another kid was like, "I think they have West Nile virus," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, we have to get this child," and I'm literally like 25 years old at this point, and so this guy is calling his mom to tell her that his sister is sick, and he says, she's sick as we're walking into the subway, and it cuts off. And we get to the bottom of the subway, and he's like, "Hey, Andy, I have to call my mom at some point because I just told her that, my sister was sick, and then it cut off." And I'm like, "Go upstairs, and then we're gonna miss the train." So he goes upstairs. Anyway, long story
Real
short
quick, every mom's worst nightmare.
Yeah,
to get a call from your child that says, "Hey, I'm sick," or the
in New
sibling
York.
is sick. "I'm in New York.
She was,
We're in
like,
New York."
14.
14-year-old, sick in New
New York.
York, nothing.
And then it goes dead. And so
Oh,
I'm like,
yes.
"Go upstairs," and they go upstairs. So then, anyway, we get to Queens. Me and
Did you
these
miss the subway or did you make it?
I think we made it. I think maybe we were a little late, but we got to Queens, me and the like, near the end. That's it. We were late. We get to Queens. It's starting we're there. It's starting to get dark. I know that whoever's speaking where at the event we're at was talking about how right behind him, there was a bunch of people living in those bushes or whatever, and I'm standing there 25 years old with, kids. My husband was supposed to meet us with the rest of the team, never shows.
Never
Never shows up.
He never showed up?
He never showed up. I'm with a
And
bunch
you
of
have a child that's sick or
I have one
a teen that's sick?
a teen sick. I don't know if she was back with someone else. I can't remember. All I know is that I was done. I was exhausted. I didn't know where my husband was. I couldn't get a hold of him. He had my baby, he had my little boy. He was missing, the team was missing. I was now in Queens with a bunch of high schoolers, and it's getting dark, and all I know is that there's a bunch of people living in those bushes, and I'm not even 100% sure how to get back. So I'm like, "You guys, I don't know what to do, and I can't get a hold of him." So I'm like, "We're just getting on the subway again and going back to where we came from," 'cause that's all I knew what to do, and I sit down on the subway, and I just start crying. And this sweet family next to me, they don't speak any English. They just hand me paper towels, and I'm just dabbing my eyes, just crying. But that is like a typical Langham story. 'Cause stuff like that happened all the time. What happened with my husband was that he looked at the wrong train schedule and sat there waiting for a train that never came. With a group of people dressed like a clowns, they were all dressed like clowns, and
And they just waited?
they waited, but while they waited, they ended up sharing Jesus with someone who came, like, to faith, so
Okay, you're sitting there crying.
I'm crying.
This amazing family's handing you paper towels. What are all the teens doing around you? Like,
They
what's
are
happening
just they
there?
are like, "Uh-oh." Like, I think they're like, "The one who's supposed to be handling everything is breaking down right now." I mean, I wasn't a loud crier, I was just, like, gently tears streaming, and they were all looking at me like, "Oh, no."
I mean, when the leader of the pack is melting down,
And the rest of the team is gone. Like, we're missing the team, we're missing Chris, who's the real leader, and I'm just, like, sobbing.
going back to where you just came from, kind of nervous about some people that live in bushes
And then there was the time
on a
we drove to
subway.
Mexico, and we drove and Chris got lost, and he had half of the team and half of the stuff,
Oh,
and
no.
my son in a carrier. It was around, like
Okay, before you go to that story, I have to finish up this New York
okay,
story because I know there's so many stories.
so many. I'll try
Okay,
to hold back.
so we have the subway. You guys, you now go back to where you just come from. You have stopped crying. The amazing
Okay.
family was so sweet to you. You get off the subway. Where do you meet up with your team?
I don't even remember. I
And did the
think
girl have West Nile?
she did not have West
Okay.
Nile, she had a cold.
Oh my gosh.
There was another girl who went to
Don't
the
worry, mom,
ER.
in California, it's just a cold.
There's another girl who's like, "My back, it's really hurt." So my friend Bethany took her to the hospital with her back, and she ended up getting Advil. It was chaos. The whole thing was chaos. We had
That is something though
yeah.
to say is when you're dealing with children or teenagers or even other people's kids, like when they say they're sick, you're like, how sick is sick? Or when your back hurts, like, how much does it hurt? Because
Yeah,
you
like,
don't
you
know
don't know
their
the
pain
history.
tolerance, you don't know the history, and I'm sorry, but children, and I'm gonna assume teenagers, don't fully understand the 0 to 10, you know?
And they're
Like,
stressed out
they
too, you know?
can't, and it's like, what is 10? I mean, do they know, do we as adults even know what 10 is? I'm gonna say as a mom who's given birth naturally, I would say that would be like a 5,500, you know?
Yes, very painful.
What really is 10? Then we're talking about 0 or the 1. And so that's part of it is like when you are taking care of other people's kids or someone does get sick or someone pukes or someone, is hurt, trying to manage that and kind of understand the situation and wonder and ask, like, is this a time to go to urgent care? Is this a time to go to the ER? Is this a time to be like, hey, have some Advil or go take a nap. Like, are you hydrated? How many times I guess teens right now are super hydrated because of all the
Yes,
Stanleys.
they have way more hydration than we ever had.
Unless they're actually not drinking the water, they're just carrying the Stanley. That's also part of it is like, did you finish that Stanley or has that water been there all day?
And then are they getting enough electrolytes? Because 'Cause they're drinking so much water, maybe we should start putting more electrolytes in there.
I mean, it's a whole thing. Are they sleeping enough? When you're like working with kids or you have other kids or teenagers around you, trying to even manage and navigate that chaos because it can be chaos. We love having people here. My kids love having their friends over. They love going to their friends' houses. Totally fun and awesome. I mean, going to New York on a subway and then ending up in Queens and there's people dressed as clowns. I mean, that's a little much, I think, when it comes to like that whole situation sounds chaotic.
Yeah.
But also to know, which I think is amazing, is you were like, and I just cried. And sometimes, like, you can't hold back the tears. Like, you just
No,
have to cry. And also, what I love about that family is, I mean, you're
th
saying they couldn't speak English, but part of it is, like, just kind of helping
they
someone
were just human.
without asking for the whole long story. "Why are you
Yes.
crying? What's going on? Do you need help? Can I help you?" Because sometimes that can even make things worse.
Yes.
Sometimes someone asking, like, "How can I help?" is amazing. That's a great question, but when it's question after question after question after question, then all of a sudden you're like, "I'm even more stressed out than
Or
I
it
was
makes you cry
originally."
more. Have you ever done that where you've, like, kept it together and then you see someone like, "How are you?" And you just it happened to me at the dentist the other day.
At the dentist? Your mouth is full, you can't talk. But
No,
when dental hygienists try to talk to
I
me and I'm
know.
like, "I can't, I can't, I can't."
No, I was like,
They're, like, pouring water and they're, like, asking questions and the
I know
water's, like, going everywhere.
you're waterboarding me. How can I answer?
I can't talk to you. Can you please tell me about your life?
No, it was so embarrassing. I was at the dentist like, I had this pain and they were like the dentist was just like, "Hey, so either we think" 'cause I was clenching my jaw, "Anyway, we think damaged you've damaged something, like needs to be done, so we're gonna have to do a root canal, but it's either a root canal or you've broken your root or your root's cracked enough to where we have to just pull the tooth." And I just start crying, and then I get it together, and they're about to take me back to the endodontist to go start the, root canal to see how it is, and Chris shows up with AirPods for me because I had texted him like, "Can you bring AirPods? It's gonna be a long time." And he shows up and he's like, "Hey," and I just lost it. I just started crying, and they're all looking at me, and I have a very short window because it was kinda like a last minute appointment, and I'm like, "No, I'm fine, just get me in the chair and just chill." Just go. And they treated me like a child. I mean, 'cause they didn't know me, and they were like, "Okay, this woman's crying."
Give her the laughing
I know,
gas.
I should have said, "Give me the gas,
Where's
I'll
the
be fine."
mask? I need to nail some laughing gas.
I should have said that.
Hook
Like,
me
"Give me
up
gas,
now.
everything's fine,
Now.
I'll be good." So,
Well, and that's part of it when you are so living life and so much is going on, it can be that one little thing, which this is a big deal. If you're talking about, like, all those issues, that is a big deal. Like, I get that. That's, like, you're gonna pull a
but it
tooth,
happens.
is it a root canal? Like, you're just like, "I just wanna go to the dentist." But something so little can set you off, and like you're saying, you're crying. There have been times, though, and, when I think does happen with moms, is it can be like their child might do the littlest thing, and now the mom's totally overreacting. And it's like, does that warrant that type of reaction from a mom? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
it's and sometimes
absolutely.
it could be like the build up, the build up, the build up. Or have you seen that meme of, like, the mom is carrying her child and they're like she has it around the waist and, like, the head's here and, like, the child's kicking and, like, that, like,
Yeah.
Superman hold kind of, and the meme is like, "Just so you
Yeah.
know, she asked her child 20 times."
And all of us moms get it. We're like, "We got you, girl. We know."
Like, all right, but to kind of see, like, is this reaction obviously you crying, like, that's why it makes sense because these are some big issues that they're talking to you about. And then Chris is like, here, here's your AirPods, okay?
You want to cover me? I'm like, "No, I have to get this done because the endodontist didn't even have time, but they, like, made time, and if I cried and missed my appointment." Anyway, but, that I'm glad you brought that up because the reason, um I think it's so important to regulate our own emotions, to make sure that we understand how we're feeling and how we can help, like, the tools to get through, is because if, like, our child is at a like, a high stress level, high upset level, if we match their energy, it makes everything worse. Like, I've seen it time and time again, I've seen it with myself, like, even if my kids calm down, if I'm like, "You got" like, if I am super stressed and upset, yeah, like, maybe they'll quiet down or maybe they'll behave, but at the same time, I know that that's causing extra stress for them. So but I don't wanna be fake either. I think being fake doesn't help. I think, the best things you can do is, like you said earlier, like, take a minute, analyze your own feelings, use your tools. Be I would say be honest with your kids, but, in a way that they can know, like, what you're doing is not okay, and we have to work on that behavior, but I'm not gonna match your intensity because that's not gonna help our relationship, it's not gonna help your mental health, it's definitely not helping my mental health, and it's gonna, add to the like, because then as mom, when you use it with your kids, then you feel that shame. And you're like, "Oh, I blew it again. I blew it again." But it's normal and natural to feel those things, to be pushed to the brink and to feel stress in your own life, and you're exhausted, and you wanna lose it. But it's yeah, we gotta regulate our emotions the best we can.
And if anyone is at that point when you're like, I'm gonna lose it, which real quick, do you remember that phrase? People used to use it all the time. I don't think our moms used it though, but you would hear other moms say, like, you're killing me. You're
Yeah,
killing me.
oh, I've said it so many
I'm
times.
so glad that that's not a phrase right now because I'm like,
I
you
would say you're killing me smalls, which is
oh,
appropriate.
that's different.
That's appropriate
But the idea of, like, you don't
from
want
The
your kid to
Sandlot.
think they're actually, like, killing
The
the
mom
mom. Like, when you
No.
start to think of that, because some kids don't understand that that's what that's coming from, or, like, that it could be funny or not actually killing the mom. Like, there's part of that when they're little, they're like, "Oh my gosh, now my behavior is killing the mom." Like, they can internalize that. So there's certain phrases even when I think moms just kind of say, where it's like, "Oh, no, they don't" if the kid takes that literally, that could actually be really damaging. That being said for all of us moms, when we're at that point when we're like, "Oh my goodness, this could be a breaking point," we all just need to take a breath, and then we all just need to think of, like, Andy on a subway with a child who might have West Nile virus and clowns who are waiting for a train that never shows up. Like, when you get to that point, just be like, "I could be at a train with a bunch of clowns, a bunch of teenagers, and a stressed
And
out
there's
mom
definitely and even in the
in
dentist.
California who thinks her kid is West Nile
Yes, and the
can't get
phone
a hold
cut
of his
off
teeth."
right then. There was
Yeah.
another time we were in Mexico and I lost Chris again. I've lost Chris, I can't even tell you. I'm so glad we have smartphones now because back then we did youth ministry. Chris was always getting lost for hours. One time he
It stresses me out, like,
I
hearing
know,
that, like,
he almost
stresses
went
me
off the
out.
cliff at midnight in Ensenada, but thankfully he didn't almost go off the cliff, but that's where his MapQuest printed directions took him,
Shout
and
out to MapQuest, and for all of those who traveled using MapQuest, like, that's
yes,
pretty amazing when you think about it. I mean, I don't wanna mention, like, what was that book? My mom Thomas
Thomas
Guide?
Guide.
Like, our moms had the Thomas Guide. We all had, like, MapQuest. Now all you younger moms, shout out, you have Maps, and it's an
I
app, and
had
it's
Thomas
amazing.
Guide as a high schooler, like, it's what we had in high
You did
school.
Thomas Guide?
Yeah. We
That's
didn't have
incredible.
MapQuest till, like, a
I was
little
in
later.
college. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
high school was
But
Homestead.
even MapQuesting, like
And then you print out the pages
the pages after pages after pa and I had, like, a stick shift car, so I'm, like, trying to drive stick shift
and turn your
and
Thomas
turn
Guide.
the page of the map quest, like, it was the whole thing, and drive. I mean, they talk about teenagers these days being distracted, which a lot are, but when you really
Yeah.
think about trying to change CDs with your MapQuest pages,
You're trying to open your book of CDs and
yeah,
unzip and find the right one.
But,
and
like,
then get it in.
never, like, get a blow on it for some reason. Like, why did that help? I don't know to this day. Does it
Flip your
help?
map, just read the
Yes.
page. There was no voice telling you.
No, and then if you took a wrong turn, screw it. There was nowhere you could go because that was not on your printed page of, like, if you messed up or you missed the wrong turn. There was no app that was updating telling you, "Turn now, turn now." I was like, "Oh
No,
gosh."
or rerouting you if you were
No.
lost, and my husband, he's adventurous and would get lost, and one time he was 4 hours late to meet our team, he had all our luggage. He was 4 hours, we're meeting in New Mexico, and he had my son again. He pulled into, a somewhere there was, like, a casino, but he pulled into, like, the gas station at the casino, and there were some kids asleep in the car with him, like, some of the youth. Like, were sleeping while he was driving and lost for 4 hours. He almost ended up in another state, and he gets out of the car, goes to the gas station to get directions because that's the era we were in, and he's getting directions. Well, the kids woke up and looked, and all they saw was that Chris was gone, and there was a casino right there. And they're like, "What is happening?"
Oh, no.
So then
That's
they
amazing.
he gets back, but none of us could
He was
sleep.
not gambling at the
Yeah,
casino
they were
with
like,
teenagers
"No,
asleep in the car.
he was not." He was getting directions.
"Wait here, kids."
They pull up, like, we had told the camp we would get there in, like, 7 o'clock. I think he rolled in at, like, 2 a.m. with all our luggage. All of us are like, "Where have you been?" Like, "What?" So and, with me, with my anxiety, I'm like, "That's it, he died. They're all dead somewhere and on the side of a road." You know what I mean? But he was
That's
fine.
intrusive thoughts, people,
That
and if
was an
you struggle
intrusive
with that,
thought.
go listen to our podcast that Andy made me do on
Yes.
intrusive
I'm
thoughts.
gonna
There's
make
2
her do another
episodes,
one. I'm
2
gonna make her
episodes.
do
Need to
another
talk about intrusive
episode.
thoughts, and that was it right there. Just calling it as it. Just calling it as it.
I to have that, I think for me, one of the biggest things that helps me regulate my emotions, again, is that gratitude. Like, even when I was in the dentist office, yeah, I couldn't help crying, and my body needed to cry. It was fine. I'm not a crier, that's the funny thing, like, I don't cry a lot, but certain things, like, apparently the dentist thing, I don't know, we might have to take that too, like, make me cry, but
That was my
how
favorite
old
tooth.
how old am I? What's wrong with me?
I named it Wilma, and I love my
I
tooth.
love my
Don't take my tooth.
but
Also, we need to say this real quickly.
okay.
It's okay to cry.
It is okay to cry.
I
Well,
am
that's what I'm saying.
I don't like when women cry and apologize for it.
No.
"I'm sorry, I'm
I
crying."
wish I
Stop saying
cried
sorry.
more.
Stop saying sorry. I don't know why women say, "I'm sorry," when they're crying. Like, just cry. You don't need to apologize. I think it's good to cry.
People who cry a lot are always like, "I hate that I cry a lot," and I'm like, "I wish I cried more." I think none of us are happy with how we cry. I think we should be able to cry as much as we need to cry.
It was like a universal thing.
Yeah. The
Interesting.
grass is always greener, the cries are always worse on the other side. But
Mind blown. Right there, people. That's something to think about.
when I was in
Don't
the
be ashamed to
dentist
cry.
don't be ashamed. Let it out, let it go, like Elsa.
Let it go.
But when I was in the dentist chair, I kept, I had to be like, "You know what? I'm so thankful that I'm at the dentist. I'm so thankful that they're gonna take care of this problem. I'm so thankful that, I can take care of this, that I do have insurance, that I can handle this." And it helped. It wasn't as helpful as laughing gas, like, that would've been amazing, and I cannot say that that would be a good coping mechanism
Maybe it
'cause
would've.
it's not, but at the dentist, it would be.
It's okay to have laughing gas at the dentist. It's loud. That's why it's there.
So, Angie, you have 5 children. You also have chaos that you enjoy bringing into your life as well. Tell us how you cope.
I think I have to just manage it in the sense of, like, I know going into this it's gonna be chaotic, and that's just how my life is right now.
You
Realistic expectations.
okay.
I'm never gonna be the mom who's calm. I'm never gonna be the mom who sits down at a park. I used to see those moms who sit down at the park. I'm not one of them, and I used to be like, "When do I get to that phase when I get to sit down at the park?"
Oh, like, you mean relax,
Yeah, like, their kids are playing, and they're sitting down, or they're
enjoying themselves.
sometimes they read, sometimes they talk to someone else, sometimes they're looking on the phone. Like, those are those moms, and for so long, I was like, "When do I get to be that mom?" And reality hit one day, and I was like, "I'm just never gonna be that person." Like, let it go. Like you're talking about, let it go. Like, you're just not gonna be the mom who sits down at a park. So if I'm going to the park, I know I'm gonna be standing up, monitoring. Because now when you're a mom who has a bunch of kids, or even if I take 2 or 3 kids, you still have to be surveying because one's on the swings and one's on the slide. So I can't be sitting down because I have to help the one on the swing or help the one on the slide. You see what I'm saying? Like, even when
Yeah.
they get a little bit older, well, and especially for moms who have twins, twins aren't, like, necessarily together all the time at the park or wherever they're at. Like, they usually kind of go their own ways. And so I think just having this idea of, like, this is where I'm at in parenting, and right now I'm managing, like, a 14-year-old and a 3-year-old, like, that's even a huge age gap,
Wow, yeah.
but to know, like, this is just my reality, and it is good for me to know, like, my capacity, like, I can get to
Totally.
max capacity, but to also know I'm gonna reach capacity and I'm gonna keep going through it. Like, some moms are much better at managing, like, "Okay, this is what I'm capable of," and then they maybe cut things out of their lives, or they kind of change things, or they reorganize, or they restructure it, which is awesome. I'm working towards that a little more than maybe I did a couple years ago. But part of that is to know, like, there are times when I'm functioning at max capacity, maybe even more than max capacity. That is my reality, but to also know it's a season. I'm not
Mm,
always gonna be functioning like that
right.
forever, but to know with certain seasons, like when the twins were babies and infants, I mean, I look back at that time, like, we weren't sleeping, it was utter chaos. I'm trying to nurse twins, and they're not growing, and so we're also adding, like, formula and the bottle, but also, like, pumping, and I had a 3.5-year-old and a 5-year-old. Like, it was utter chaos. Like, that whole time was so much. So sometimes when it starts to seem overwhelming, I kind of look back at, like, "Well, if I handled it there."
If I did that, if I
I know.
survived.
Yes, I know I can get through this. I mean, our past May, because obviously now we're in June, and, like, our past May to me was busier than even most Mays usually are. So then within that, okay, I could not check my email every single night like I used to, or there were certain texts I just could not respond until 2 weeks later, or whatever it is, like, to realize the priority of this is what has to come next, and then this, and then this, and then try to schedule around that. I mean, I know I've been before, but for us, like, my calendar is everything, and I'm always checking the calendar to know, like, what's coming, what's the next thing, and we're not only talking about, like, for tomorrow, sometimes it's, like, a week in advance, or, like, part of it could be also, like, okay, what can Ryan help with, which he does a great job being an Uber driver as well. If my mom's in town, because my parents travel a lot, like, my mom can maybe pick up Riley, or carpooling, that's been huge, and having friends to help with carpooling. So I think, though, sometimes we have expectations, or we look at moms and be like, "Oh, that looks so nice." Or like, "Oh, that must be amazing," and it is amazing, and that's for them. We also don't know what their capacity is, though, and what they're
Yeah.
capable of. We don't know their situation. So to know if maybe there's a mom who doesn't do to us, "Well, they don't do that much," or "Their kids aren't in as many sports," or "Their kids aren't involved in as many extracurricular activities." Well, that's what's best for their family. And people might look at that for us like, "What? Your kids are only involved in 2 sports and church trips?" I mean, people might even look at us like that.
I don't I
No,
think
no,
everybody looks at
2
well,
sports
it's
for each
funny.
fucking kid is not
5 kids is plenty to be busy, but then sports.
okay, so sweet. I love this so much, and this always makes me so happy when I get this. There's a lot of time when sometimes it's just me and Cole, like when the girls are all at school and it's just me and Cole, or like even at Emma, my niece graduated from high school. Shout out Emma. We were at like her graduation party, and Cole was bouncing in the trampoline, and I was watching him as he's bouncing in the trampoline. I'm like talking to this mom, and she was so sweet, and she's like, "Oh, is he your only one?" Like, I love getting asked that question. I'm like, "Do you have one?" And sometimes it's like, I just say like, "Oh, he's my only boy." And then other times I'm like, "Actually, there's a little whole crew over there."
Aw. Yeah, I think, I like what you said about managing those expectations as far as what you're capable of, and I think a big key to that is not and I know we've said this before, but not comparing yourself to others. I think, like, you and, even Danielle, like, both of you have a lot of energy. I'm just gonna say it, and your mom too, like, you guys are high energy people, and you have a higher capacity than I think a lot. In fact, today when I was helping, Danielle clean up after the storm where of this big party she had with which had, like, hundreds of people at it and was amazing and incredible, like, I heard Danielle was mentioning something about having more people over or something, and this mom's like, "Danielle, how do you do it? I'm already tired." And I was like, "I think that's what we all think when we hear about all the stuff you guys do." You guys have a higher capacity, but you're also, like, you do you. Like, if you don't have that capacity, then don't do it just because you think that you have to have the capacity. Now, I don't think I think there's a balance in there that you have to still, like, show up and be there and, like,
Right.
you are gonna be in chaos, and there's things as a parent you have to do whether or not it's your capacity, but as far as, like, how far you go, how much how many sports you're involved in or whatever it is, what your family can do is individual to that family, because people who, like, have other things that are a big part of their life outside of the home, like maybe in ministry, a pastor's family, or whatever it might be, or maybe there's special needs, or there's, um, parent things, whatever it is where they can't do all the things, like, do what you can do, and don't worry about it. Don't worry if your bento box lunch is as perfect as it should be. I know I bring the bento box lunch, but that's up a lot. Whenever I'm, like, scrolling through reels and I see people making the perfect lunch for their children, like, their 6 children, I'm like, "No, this isn't helping." This isn't helping, but good for you. Good that you do that, but I think for a lot of people, that's overwhelming.
You can be inspired, but
Yeah.
don't be braggy. That's where it's like, "Are you showing this to inspire me, or you're just trying to brag?"
Bragging.
Or they would say flex in the
Yeah.
lingo,
Oh,
we
talk
talked
about
about lingo and teenage lingo. Are you
yeah, we used to say that
flexing?
in the '80s. You're just I don't know if we had a word for it, but yeah, when you're just flexing how much you do, or like, I was at this point, I saw these moms, "This is what I do at 4:30 in the morning." They wake up at 4:30 and blah, 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 and I'm like, "I don't," and then I'd be like, "Man, I need to get up at 4:30." I'm like, "Why am I getting up at 4:30?
No,
I don't
honey.
need to. Why is that a goal all of a sudden? I don't need to. That's not my capacity. Some people can get up at 4:30 and that's great for them, but it's just not for me, and that's okay."
And that's, I think, a great way to end this podcast because moms, we want to encourage you. We want to support you, especially as like now summer is upon us. And you might be like, oh my gosh, May was a whirlwind, but now you're dealing with the summer camps and your kids are at home
Now
now
and
and
they're
they're eating all the snacks. All the
all the
snacks.
snacks. Your snack budget just went through the roof.
Totally, 100%. So you guys, for those moms who are navigating chaos, which let's face it, that's all us moms, make sure to tell them about the podcast and to like it and share it. And
At Mother Funny Podcast on YouTube. It's at
yeah,
Mother Funny
just at
Podcast.
Mother Funny or at Mother Funny
And then
Podcast
like
on
us
YouTube
on Instagram.
and
We wanna
Facebook
be on Facebook. We're
or
both.
both. And both. We should say both.
Do it all.
All the things.
Do it all. And, yeah.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck in the
Manage that
chaos.
chaos.
Yes.
Bye. All right, that's all we have time for today. We got to wrap it up, unfortunately. But just remember, you might think you're doing just okay, but we think you're doing really great.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you have a great Mother Funny day. Please like and share our podcast.
But please don't tell our moms.